Shannon Griffith, as well as we're talking Big Ten football. Purdue and Indiana, similar situations, although Purdue will be in the second year of a new regime. Indiana, of course, in the first year of a new regime. And I know that if it's a Purdue fan that hears this, they're going to take this as a slight, and it's not. But I get the sense that Indiana is much further ahead going into year one of the new regime than Purdue was going into year one, and the results that came from that season at Purdue, it looked like a year one deal. It's not, I'm not getting on them. It was typical, but I get a different sensation with the Indiana situation. And part of that involves the schedule and looking at all that and how that will lay out. The fact that Curt Cignetti is a proven winner already as a head coach, that's another difference. You brought an intact staff in place, ready to go, that has also coached in the same system. I mean, the mere fact that he has all these assistants that have been with him this long, I know that they were mostly assistants at mid-level colleges, schools, but it doesn't matter. It's that linear thinking that they're all on the same page. And not to take a swipe at IU basketball, but I look at that situation. You got a new coach that comes in and he just keeps the staff from the old regime who got fired for losing. Just very, very different scenarios. But I think that Indiana is ahead of Purdue, of where Purdue was. And I'm just using that as an example. It's not a slight. No, I have no idea what Purdue is going to be like this year. We'll talk about that in a second. But what do you agree, disagree, other on that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what you just pointed out, is that Indiana hired an experienced head coach who already has a tried and true protocol for what and how he likes to run a program, from assistant coaches down to the type of players that he likes to involve in his program. Ryan Walters was a guy that was a defensive coordinator. He's young, so he's not had as much experience sitting at the head of the table in the conference room. And again, that's not a slight against Ryan Walters, because I think he's a darn good football coach and a defensive coach at that. But there is a difference between somebody that has experience versus somebody that's coming in fresh off of just being a coordinator. It is a night and day move from being an assistant or a coordinator to being the guy that's at the end of the table where all the decisions you're going to make. But I do think that's probably where you get that maybe security blanket per se, with having a guy like Coach Cignetti come in as the head coach at Indiana. And I think you'd have had the same, even if it wasn't, let's just say, Coach Cignetti, it was another head coach, because I think what you see is a very in tune, organized, this is the way we do it, this is how we're going to do it, versus a guy that's trying to say, I'm trying to get my staff in line, then we'll talk about how we're going to do it and things of that nature.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how that manifests itself come September. I just, again, because of the schedule, there's never been a schedule laid out for a new head coach ever in the history of college football like this one has been laid out for Indiana, and in a conference like the Big Ten. It's now on paper it's easy to say that, because I say that because UCLA, new coach, Washington, new coach, 8 home games, everything is backloaded as far as the meat of their schedule. And that is just Michigan and Ohio State, or Michigan and is it Michigan and Ohio State?
What's that?
On the schedule at the end of the year.
I think it's
remember now. I'm drawing
Michigan.
a blank.
Yeah.
Well, then they play somebody else of that caliber as well. But anyway, I don't have it pulled up in front of me. But it's like 2 out of the last 3 games of the season, which that's momentum. You can just have so much going by then that who knows?
You're right. They play Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back November 9th, November 23rd.
How about that? Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back games, first of all.
Yeah, that in itself right there is a killer. They play Michigan at home. They're one of the 8, and they play Ohio State in Columbus. And that's the week before. That's going to be a week before the Purdue game. So
guess what? I just now realized yet another coaching change. I know it's Michigan who just won a national championship,
right,
but you still have a coaching change. So now you've got 3 teams on the schedule that have had coaching changes, and you're also a coaching change program.
Yep. Yeah, and that's in defense of all those, I think you probably say Michigan is the one that probably is the one that's a half coaching change since Sharon Moore was there and in place, and the only reason why he's had to replace coaches is because they've mostly gone with Harbaugh to the Chargers. But that's a gauntlet when you look at it and say, yeah, they got 8 home games, but at the end of the year, you're talking Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue. And the one thing that you don't want to get into there is saying you got to win 2 or 3 of those to get to a bowl game.
Oh, no. if you're at that point, man, things are not good.
Yeah.
But I think that by the time that rolls around, I think that issue will already have been put to bed.
Yeah, you can look at it. Northwestern, new coach. Michigan State, new coach. Washington, new coach.
I forgot about Michigan State.
Yeah.
Gee whiz.
Michigan, a new coach. Purdue, second-year head coach. Nebraska, second-year head coach, I believe.
So we're talking 5 or the 6 teams.
Yeah, UCLA, new coach. So there was a lot of change. Yeah, there was a lot of change in the Big Ten alone, and part of that change is felt because they've expanded. So you're going to see a lot of new faces and a lot of young new faces at the head coaching arena. Again, you take Nebraska, for instance, okay? They go out and hire a experienced college coach, NFL coach, where he has had a track record of winning, especially in college, and he's got them molded into, I think you're going to see a big jump with Nebraska this year based upon what he has in store, what he did this year with what he had. And
another new coach, second-year coach.
Right. And he's in that regard, again, these coaches that have experience in what they are, and they've sat at the end of the table, they've made the tough decision. They have an idea of how they're going to run a program from A to Z. That's not to say that the young guys don't have that same incentive or idea of how they're going to run a program. The difference is those coaches that have experience sitting at the end of the table, been there, done that. So they've been able to shape and adjust their philosophy because they've either had experience that doesn't work, or I need to think about doing this better because I was wrong. That all comes with experience. That all comes with going through seasons and coaches and finding the correct mix. So that's why you see a team like Nebraska now starting to get themselves into a better arena. Now, some people are going to say, well, look, they hired Scott Frost Scott Frost won at Central Florida. I mean, yeah, give him credit. He was still a young coach going into Nebraska. I mean, there's a big difference to me with Scott Frost and what, is in place. So it's going to be an interesting season in the Big Ten, just from the standpoint of all the new faces, the new teams. Hear that. I mean, Ohio State's got to be feeling pretty good. Their nemesis at Michigan is left. You've got all these coaching changes. They get I'm a little surprised at the hire at, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly leaving UCLA head coaching job to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State.
That tells you how bad things are to be the coach at UCLA in this new era of college football, I think a big part of that is NIL. And it's not that they cannot afford, that they don't have money in Los Angeles. Nobody gives a crap about college football in Los. They do, but it's such a small portion of the small segment of the society that, and you've got USC.
Yeah, that's the big
neither
problem.
of them are killing it in NIL, are they? But yeah, you've got the juggernaut USC that has kind of stepped up and is like, yeah, I'm tired of fighting this battle. And it's a battle that is maybe LA is not as big a draw as it used to be.
Yeah. Well, there's two things there that make UCLA a tough job. You can't live in Pasadena. It's too expensive. So you got guys living 45 minutes to an hour away based upon traffic. That doesn't help things. But I'm just interested to see the dynamic of how Ryan Day and Chip Kelly get along. As that dynamic, you got two head coaches, essentially offensive minded guys. So, I look back at Indiana. I think we're going to see a lot of things that are going to develop out of spring practice. If I think they can make a decision on some of the positions and set a course forward, I think, going into the summer and then up into fall camp, coming into settled positions, I think you're going to see remarkable improvement week to week. I don't think you can be bogged down at the quarterback position on who the guy is. I think you have to have a guy. And I do believe Coach Cignetti will have a guy. And I think they'll come out of spring with that. Now, he's not going to tell us who the guy is until up to, 11:58 on a noon kickoff. But I do think you're going to see a more orchestrated, a more defined, a more focal point type of program with Coach Cignetti. And I do think in the long run, that will pay off on a lot of fronts. I hope there's instant success. I hope the 8-game schedule gets them into a situation where it catapults them into I can't be beat mentality. And it gets them to having a great year in, proving some naysayers wrong, maybe, but we'll have to see. But I think just because of this, the fact that he's a experienced head coach bodes well for Indiana when it comes to putting on a team out on the field that's going to be ultra competitive, because I think they've shown that over the years. We just need them to get over that hump.
Oh, not allowed to say that. That's John. John. When somebody says that, there should be lights and bells that go off, and
what?
Like
Shannon. So among Indiana basketball fans, saying over the hump is a bad word amongst Indiana basketball fans right now, because
I didn't say
Mike Woodson says it all of the time. Honestly, it's really funny that you said it, but whenever it's like a PTSD thing for Indiana basketball fans right now. Honestly,
yeah. Well, that are the thick of things. We're in the thick of things, and it's week, 15. But let's give Indiana some credit, guys. Now, they did have a big win against Wisconsin. They showed some resiliency. They showed some mental toughness, which I haven't seen all year. Now, let's not get over hyped because it was a one win. You need some validation.
Oh, don't worry. There's nobody overhyping. I promise you. That is fun. That is not a concern that you need to have.
That was one of the topics yesterday I talked about on the Sports Rush was, give Indiana a pat on the back, but let's not hand them the red carpet treatment all the way through the Big Ten tourney. They got to prove it, and I'll pick up on it tomorrow when I sit in for Brett Rump once again.